Good morning. I decided to try blurring the background today. Does it look okay? It kind of looks kind of ridiculous, doesn't it? Maybe I'll get rid of that. I mean, it was a silly idea. It was a silly idea. What was I thinking? I don't know. I feel like, there we go. I feel like, in concept, it was like a good idea, but in practice, it just looked a bit silly. Anyway. Let me move this lamp as well. There we go. Welcome to Backchannel. It's 9 o'clock here on the West Coast on this Friday morning. It's the 18th of February. I'm Anthony Davis. This is the Anthony Davis Show, as it says just there. It's a bit higher than it normally is. It says when it returns. It's only just starting. I'm in LA, Carla's producing, she's in London, and we've got lots to talk about today. You're welcome to join in the usual way. You can wake up your device, say the word say, and then your message. If you have an Echo Show, that is, you can message me via the web chat. Just go to backchannel.tv, and you're also welcome to, what was the third one? Oh yeah, follow the show on YouTube. There we go. So, let's take a look at what we've got happening this morning because so many subjects and such little time. We're going to look at the US mayoral candidate who was shot during a campaign meeting this week has blasted the decision to grant bail to his alleged would-be assassin. We'll look at that story together. Also, 143 Republicans are running for Congress in Texas. Only 13 say that the 2020 election was legitimate. Could be a cause for concern. Plus, it's Black History Month. Comedy is a notoriously difficult field to break into. In fact, a fact only amplified if you happen to be a woman, let alone a black woman, in the early days of stand-up and vaudeville. Didn't stop Mums Mabley, though. We'll look at her and her life and her story a little bit later here on Backchannel. Patrick says hi, good morning. Patrick, welcome. Michael, hello, good morning, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Nice to know you're part of the show so soon. We're going to jump straight into the morning newspapers. We're going to go to Florida first and the news press. They lead this morning with Naples Pride to protest bills today. This is LGBTQ advocacy group will march downtown. It says among the Friday night crowd strolling down 5th Avenue South in Naples will be some moving with a more decisive step. That's right, members. That's Naples and members together. Members Pride, the advocacy organization for LGBT. Start again. I'll do all this again. Members of Naples Pride, the advocacy organization of LGBTQ plus issues, will march through downtown as a finale to an afternoon campaign against two education bills targeting them. The group will start at the Collier County Government Center, where they will deliver a petition opposing the bill to the office of the State Senate Kathleen Passidomo. They say, we know she's not there, but at least we can present it to her assistants. We want to have a lot of people coming in there. So there we go. Also, Florida House moves to roll back abortion rights. Excuse me, choking already. Barely started. Choking, can't read. Blurry background. I mean, everything's going wrong. A ban on abortions in Florida after 15 weeks of pregnancy is another step closer to becoming law after a late night party line vote early Thursday, in the Florida home. Listen to me. I mean, I've literally been possessed by a less talented broadcaster. Lawmakers debated for 5 hours and 27 minutes what would be the state's most restrictive abortion law since the 1973 Roe v. Wade decision established a woman's constitutional right to terminate a pregnancy. The exchange highlighted the partisan divide on the issue, including two lawmakers relating their own abortion experiences. I mean, I just despair with Florida now. Like, I've just lost all respect for the leaders of Florida, and because, even if there was like a survey that was done, which has never been done, by the way, they've never even polled their own people to find out how many people want to, make abortion illegal. They've never even checked. Isn't that disgraceful? Like, they've never even checked. But if you were to poll everybody in Florida, obviously more people than not are going to be pro-abortion. They just are. It's the modern way. And anti-abortion, I don't call it pro-life because I think that is a loaded title. It's loaded because, everyone has their opinion when life begins. I happen to believe that life begins when a child is born, and that's because I've had children. I've also lost a child. I also recognize what it's like to kind of go through those 10 months. People think it's 9 months, and it's not. It's 10 months of gestation, and how difficult it is to get all the way through with a healthy baby. And I also know what it's like to go through with an unhealthy baby that will not live. And so to hear men, invariably old, fat, white men, giving, if only they were fat because they were pregnant. I mean, wouldn't that be great if these men were actually carrying the child and then they might be able to have a say? But, you know, where are the women in this debate? Where are the women in this debate? They're standing like 3 steps behind the men with their heads down. And this is the thing, and it seems to just keep going like this kind of relentless kind of push to get to this kind of evangelical Christian perfection, which is not representative of the country. It just isn't. Anyway, so Florida House moves to roll back abortion rights with a 15-week ban. Wonderful. Come to Florida, where all of your dreams will not come true. Publix no longer requires masks for vaccinated employees. This is the largest grocery store chain in Florida. One of the state's top employers is no longer requiring its non-pharmacy employees to mask up if they're vaccinated. Lakeland-based Publix says on its website that the changes as a result of the decrease in COVID-19 cases and wide availability of the vaccine. I mean, they're just wrong. They're just wrong. All the experts say the same thing. The pandemic's not over. Do not take your mask off. Keep wearing your mask. They keep saying the same thing. So, like, do you want it to be over, or do you want it just to continue forever so you can moan about it? Maybe that's what they want. Maybe they actually want the pandemic to continue so they can be seen to be the ones not wearing the masks and being strong, super strong, machismo Americans. The men and the women. I've watched videos of Floridians arguing in parking lots. You know, trying to demask people. So crazy. The grocery store chain, which employs 225,000 people nationwide, is the largest Florida-based employee to recently change its position on masks. I wonder if the staff have to. It says pharmacy staff will have to when administering vaccines. Oh, man. I mean, there is a word for this. Manslaughter. That's the word. That's the word I was thinking of. This is manslaughter. You're effectively putting your staff and yourselves, your customers, delivery people, cleaners, putting everybody at risk. Manslaughter. Okay, that's the news press. Let's move on, because that's what we do. We're going to go to Orlando next, and to the Sentinel. Stacey, hi. Robert, hi. Yes, Stacey, I'm ready for the lunch hour. I am always ready for your lunch hour. Same story, state poised to ban abortions after 15 weeks. A photograph also of a museum director. Absolutely no doubt that Basquiats are genuine. Interesting. This is the $1 million question. Are they real? Make that a $100 million question, maybe a $200 million question. Orlando Museum of Art's new exhibition of Jean-Michel Basquiat's work has drawn international attention, but not all of it is the sort the museum wants. While Forbes magazine proclaimed the Heroes and Monsters exhibit a presentation to be enjoyed by the entire nation, if not the world, the New York Times interviewed people skeptical that the works are even genuine. I do love that. Don't you? The idea that like everyone's crowding around a painting and they're like, nah, I just think that might be a fake. I've actually always found the concept of an artist, a modern artist who is able to replicate a classic piece, you know, a very expensive piece of work, especially, you know, from the greats, because there's plenty of these forgers around, you know. Well, when I say plenty, there's very few that can fool the art trade, but the ones that can fool the art trade, I mean, it's just beautiful. I think it's beautiful. I've always had like a secret kind of respect and interest for the criminal fraternity when it comes to romantic things like paintings. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I'm not into petty crime, you know, and that, and obviously, you know, serious crime, murder, doesn't interest me. But the idea of a kind of wealthy person losing a little bit of their wealth because it turns out that they've bought a fraudulent painting, very happy to kind of entertain that kind of stuff. I just feel like more fool them, you know? My grandmother used to say that if the Queen walked into a room wearing a string of pearls, you would presume that they were real, right? By nature of the fact that the Queen is wearing them. And I always thought that was very good advice because, it's all about perception, projection, and fundamentally, if you went into someone's nice house, they've had a nice house with a lovely, maybe like a double front door. That's how you know that someone's made it. They've got a double front door. And they go in, and then you know they've definitely made it if they've got a central island unit in their kitchen that's plumbed for electricity and water. I mean, then they've definitely made it. But if you were in that house and you saw one of these paintings up on the wall, you presume it was real. I mean, who cares if it's fake? Who cares? I mean, it doesn't bother me at all. Based on the Times story, the sensationalist Daily Mail of London screamed, and this is a terrible newspaper in England, by the way, Orlando Museum of Art is accused of unveiling 25 fake Jean-Michel Basquiat paintings. On Thursday, museum director Aaron de Groft dismissed the Times article as an avalanche of inaccuracies. He said, "We followed every rigorous process in arranging the Heroes and Monsters exhibition. We remain extremely confident in this exhibition." I'm not very big on art, especially modern art. I don't know a huge amount about it. And I don't really know who Jean-Michel Basquiat is. Am I saying his name right? Basquiat. I'm sure he's huge, but it just doesn't interest me. I mean, I don't. I've always struggled to connect with art. Like, here's the thing. I went to the Louvre. Oh, I see. He's like popular culture. And I'm just stuck in the 80s. I went to the Louvre in Paris, and I did the entire exhibition museum, saw the Venus de Milo, saw the Mona Lisa, did the whole thing, 9 minutes. 9 minutes. I think that might be my record. I can get around a gallery or an exhibition in the time it takes for you to make a cup of coffee. The Louvre, 9 minutes, and I wasn't even walking fast. Yep, seen it. Yep, seen it. Yep, seen it. Let's go eat. They do have a very nice restaurant upstairs. Spent a good few hours up there. Okay, we'll talk a little more about Jean-Michel in just a moment. Find out what's happening with him and how he came to have a bunch of fake paintings in a museum in Orlando. Lake School Board member resigns mid-term citing divisiveness. Lake County School Board member resigned this week with 2 years left in her term, saying the general political discourse and divisiveness is just too much for me to continue in my seat at this point. Christy Burns, in the middle of her second 4-year term, said she's stepping down effective May 1st. Other candidates can now run for her seat in August when the school board elections are held across the state. Her decision may be a sign of things to come in Florida. Though no other Florida school board members have resigned recently, a number of veteran board members will likely not run for re-election this year because, like Burns, they are upset about the loss of civil discourse. I mean, this is the tragedy, isn't it? And you know something? Here's the thing that makes me so sad about all this, because I'm a big proponent of free speech. But when the free speech, and this also applies to the blockades in Ottawa, when the free speech is built on a lie, it ceases to be valid. You know, it ceases to be valid. These people have been spun a story and a lie, and they are taking on those views as their free speech. But free speech is fine if it's true. But it just isn't true, and that's not my opinion. Critical race theory is not taught in schools. You know, this is the reason why there's all of these meetings going on with all of these, right-wing people going crazy. They haven't really looked or listened or researched or care. It's all about getting on the Trump train, on the movement, the steam train. Let's, make America great again. It's nothing to do with the facts. It's to do with a feeling. And I just don't know that it's fair to have this civil discourse on a whim. I think civil discourse is fair if something is truly unjust, but nothing in our lives right now is truly unjust, apart from maybe police officers executing black people. The election was not fraudulent. The election was factual and accurate. The vaccines work, and they're not a bioweapon invented by Dr. Fauci. Their entire movement is built on a lie. So how can you crave and celebrate free speech if your speech is not based on fact? And that's why people are going to resign. That's why people like Christy Burns in the middle of her second 4-year term are going to step down and be like, you know something? I'm out. Count me out. It's very worrying to me. And it's a little bit like the people in Ottawa and at the Canadian border previously, who claim that their freedom is being eroded, and yet they are a far-right movement, and they hold Donald Trump in high regard, who himself is an authoritarian. So that they are claiming in one hand that they want their freedom, and in another hand they're supporting a guy who doesn't want to give them freedom. Excuse me. Choking on something in here. I think it's dust. Where's the cough button when you need it? You know? So that's really my greatest concern with this whole thing. I really feel like we are stuck in a bit of a time warp. And people think that their freedom and their liberty is all powerful. And this is why so many of these people, when they're interviewed, they compare being asked to get vaccinated or show their vaccine card at a restaurant. They're comparing that to Jews during the Holocaust. They have absolutely no idea what loss of freedom means. No idea. And it's as if they've chosen Jews because they're trying to gain some upper hand, or even some supposed equality. Like it's not by chance that they're using the Holocaust as an equivalent, because that in itself is their prejudice coming out. You know, it's like we've suffered as much as they have. Jaden, hello. Tyson, hello. Sawyer has joined us as well. It's great to know that you're here. It's so nice just to be able to chat with you guys, you know, whatever. Stacey says, whenever I'm checking on somebody comes in immediately. That's great. Look, Charlotte just popped in as well. Hi, Charlotte. Welcome. Nice to see you. I mean, I can't see you, but you can see me, which is wonderful. My camera seems to be working really well today. Like the depth of field, everything seems to be working. I don't know why that is. It's just random. It's taken me a while to work out how to get lights in here that don't reflect in my glasses. It's taken me a long time to work that out. It's all going on. Do you want to see? Look, I can flick the camera up. Watch this. Here we go. Ready? Ooh. See? See that white piece of foam there? That's reflecting all of the light onto my face. That's what's happening. It's a big white piece of foam. It's reflecting all the light on my face. So there's no lights. This is the secret. This is why it's like, it's well lit, but it's not like, well, it is a bit birdy out. It's not a great camera, I'll be honest. It's not a great camera. I do my best, you know. I just do my best. 9:21 here on the West Coast. This is Backchannel. Tyson says I'm on TikTok. Well, get off that thing and get over here. What are you doing? Cheating on me. Okay, let's go to the next newspaper. We're going to Pensacola now in Florida. Tyson, who's your? Oh, there's a Kim Potter thing. Kim Potter's been sentenced to 2 years in prison. That just broke. Do we know this story? This is the woman who killed Daunte Wright. She, do you remember? She pulled her taser, and it actually wasn't her taser; it was her gun, and she shot him. She's been sentenced to 2 years in prison. Well, that's good because, you know, she should know. She's been a police officer for like 30 years. She should know the difference between a taser, which is one color and is a different weight, and a gun, and they're in two different positions on her holster. You know? And also, why are you so desperate to shoot someone? Just let them go. Just let them go. You know, Daunte Wright didn't do it. It was like a traffic stop. Just let him go. You don't execute someone. You don't even taser them. I mean, just think about that for a moment, just conceptually. The idea that you would taser somebody on a traffic stop. And if it's because they're resisting, well, who the hell are you to try and change the course of their day like this? You executed him. 2 years in prison. It's actually not enough, really, is it? Let's be honest. Thinking about it now, it's not really enough. Okay, here we are with the Pensacola News Journal. Pensacola loses battle to preserve live oak. This is a live oak tree in the North Hill neighborhood. A 3-judge panel at the Florida 1st District Court of Appeal ruled on Tuesday in a 2-1 decision in favor of property owners seeking the tree's removal. The lawsuit is a test case for a 2019 law that allows residential property owners to bypass local tree removal permits and their fees if they get a certified arborist. Or, is that what you say? Arborist. Or landscape architect to document the tree in question. There you go. I'm just going to flick this little switch here so I can turn on the air conditioning. Because it's getting a bit warm in here already. It's actually 57 degrees outside, which I thought it was a lot warmer. It's only 57 degrees. Interesting. Okay, Ella Jordan home renovated as Black Women's History Museum. This is amazing, isn't it? This is a historic home in the Belmont de Villiers neighborhood that was an integral part of Black women's history. It's been saved and soon to be opened as a museum and a meeting space. The Ella Jordan home stands at the corner of North C and West La Rue Streets, bright pink and so meticulously remodeled you could never tell that it was vacant and ripped down to the studs only a few years ago. Historically, this house was known as the home of Pensacola chapter of the Federation of Colored Women's Clubs starting in the 1950s. Hang on a second. I mean, why would you rip it down to the studs? Then the house doesn't exist anymore. Do you know what I mean? It's like if you're preserving a historic house, don't rip it down to the studs. Because then you might as well... It's a bit like Harry Houdini's house that is just down the road from me here. It burned down and they built a whole new house that he never went to and they still call it Harry Houdini's house. I'm like, it's a different house. Budgets in House and Senate are $3.3 billion apart is the headline. This says a $3.3 billion bottom line difference defines spending plans in the legislature with House and Senate awash in dollars from a recovering state economy, layered on top of COVID-19 relief aid from Washington. House approved a slightly slimmer $105 billion state budget proposal for next year. So there we are. That's Pensacola. Sounds like Pepsi-Cola. Stacey says, do you take somebody if they're out of control? Oh, is that about pulling somebody over? Look, my view is this. Let's be very clear about, pulling people over, especially black people, because black people are aware of the fact that they are more likely to be shot and killed. Now, you imagine what it would be like if you were pulled over and you feared for your life because you didn't trust the person in uniform. The very person we're supposed to trust, you can't trust because you know that they're systemically and institutionally racist. So what do? Parents of young black people are teach their children how to be with the police so they don't get shot. I mean, isn't that tragic? That parents are teaching children how to handle the police so as not to escalate. One thing they don't take into account is fear. Imagine fear. And so many people have been shot in the back because they fear the police and they run. They just want to get as far away as possible. And what do the police do in that instance, which they shouldn't do? They fire their weapons. So, in answer to your question, Stacey, if somebody is trying to get away from the police because they're nervous that they're going to get executed, let them go. Don't execute them. Because then the crime that you are seeking to prevent is not whatever you pulled them over for, a broken taillight, but you're actually going to kill them for running away from you. Resisting arrest. Who cares? Go arrest them tomorrow. You've got their license plate. Go arrest them on another day when they're not running away from you. And go without your weapons and say, look, we need to arrest you from yesterday. We're not going to touch our guns. And they'll be like, fine. People are terrified of the police. Terrified. And they end up dying. And so Consequently, this is why Kim Potter, the police officer who shot and killed Dante Wright, has been sentenced to 2 years in prison. Should have been 20 years, but, there it is. It's just the way it is. How do you set an example? What is the price of Dante Wright's life? 2 years, that's all. It wasn't an accident. I watched the video. The fact that she intended to taser him suggests to me that she intended to do harm. Just stop harming people. Especially people that are terrified of you. When we are scared, we do crazy things. Davey has joined us. Hi. Mama has joined us. Cade has joined us. Raymond has joined us. Welcome to Backchannel. It's Friday. Thank Crunchy. It's Friday. Do they have Crunchies in America? I don't know. Crunchy is a British chocolate, and it used to be advertised, thank Crunchy, it's Friday. I don't quite know why. Crunchy was like a honeycomb wrapped in chocolate. Milk chocolate. I think it was made by Roundtrees. It's irrelevant. Cadbury's Crunchy? Okay, I'll take your word for it. It was Cadbury's, apparently. I'm sure you're right. I'm not very good on chocolate. By the time that I've had a look at the wrapper, I've already ingested it. Do you know, I think Twix might be the greatest chocolate that ever lived. I think it might be the single greatest chocolate that ever lived. To get that combination of the biscuit base with the caramel topping wrapped in chocolate, are you kidding me? And there's not just one of them. You eat one and you're like, oh man, that was delicious. You look in the packet and there's another one. I used to be the voice of the Twix commercial in England. And I was very excited. I did it for a few years. And that was a very big thing for me because it was literally my favorite chocolate. And so when you get the job to be the voice in the advert of your favorite chocolate, life-changing. I was literally prepared for them to pay me in chocolate. I was like, don't worry about the money. I'll just take the chocolate. I wonder how popular Twix is here. I mean, American chocolate is a whole different thing. The Hershey bar and all that. I just can't get into it. I don't like the flavors. A Reese's Piece I can just about handle. The Hershey chocolate just doesn't taste like chocolate to me. I like milk chocolate. I don't like dark chocolate, and I certainly don't like this hybrid that is a Hershey bar. A Hershey bar, I think it's to do with the milk. I mean, I pay through the nose to get imported chocolate here. I pay so much money for chocolate here. I pay like $5 or $6 for a bar of chocolate just so I can get the stuff that tastes like it does in England. Because even Cadbury's that's made here, I think it might be made in Mexico actually, but even the Cadbury's that is made here, the milk is not the same. Different cows, American cows, They work harder, get fatter, don't get any time off. Okay, next up, let's move on with those newspapers to the Times Standard for California. Don't call it a pandemic. COVID-19 is an endemic. These are the words of Gavin Newsom. It says after an almost 2-year global emergency, state officials are signaling that COVID-19 pandemic is over. They say it's time to take a new approach now that the Omicron variant is circulating widely without overwhelming hospitals. Today, COVID-19 is no longer a novel foe, said California Health and Human Services Secretary Dr. Mark Galey. While we lived in a relative state of fear for much of the last 2 years, we can now balance these concerns by being smarter. Yeah, wear a mask. That's how you can be smarter. Keep your mask off. Don't take it off. I'm going to the theatre on Saturday night. First time into the theatre, and I'm a little nervous about the old masking situation. So I think I'm going to wear 3 masks. One on each ear and one over my nose and mouth, because it can get in your ears as well. I'm just going to bag myself. At a news conference on Thursday, Galli revealed the state's framework called Smarter Plan for addressing the next phase of the COVID-19 response. The Smarter Plan acronym stands for S for shots, M for masks, A for awareness, R for readiness, T for testing, E for education, and R for RX, ensuring the supply of medicine and treatments are ready available. I think that RX is like for a prescription, isn't it? That's the prescription thing. The weather is so bad. The weather is so bad in England right now. If you're in England, I don't know, you're probably not in England, but I have friends and family there. They have a hurricane at the moment called Eustace. Is it called Eustace? Eustace. Eunice. There we go. And there's a TV channel. Well, it's not even a TV channel. It's like a YouTube channel called Big Plains TV. And everybody has been watching this. And Big Jet TV. I started watching it at 5 o'clock this morning, Los Angeles time, when I woke up. And I literally watched it for 3 hours, just watching planes land in like 60-mile-an-hour winds. And I have to tell you, the airmanship of these pilots is fantastic because the auto-land facility doesn't work when the wind gusts this much. It just doesn't work. So all of these planes are being landed manually, stick time. And testament to seeing all these different countries, Turkish Airlines, American Airlines, Virgin Atlantic, lots of British Airways, obviously, Middle East, Far East, all over, all landing beautifully. Only one plane had to go around a couple of times, and I think that was where was that from? It was from the Middle East somewhere. Qatar. It was from Qatar. So let's take a look at what else is on the front. 73% of US now immune to Omicron, they say. Yes, the Omicron wave that assaulted the United States this winter also bolstered its defenses, leaving enough protection against the coronavirus that future spikes will likely require much less, if any, dramatic disruption to society. Millions of individual Americans' immune systems now recognize the virus and are primed to fight it off if they encounter Omicron or even another variant. Isn't that great news? It's just great news. 73% of the US. What happened to the other? What happened to the other 27%? What happened to those? Is it 27? 73 from 100. 73 minus 3. Carry the 3. 3 from 80, 81. Add 1. 82. I don't know. I'm having a stroke. That's what's happening to me. I'm having a momentary stroke. I've been up since first thing this morning watching Plains TV. I mean, I'm in no fit state to do this program. Look at me. I need coffee desperately. I come down here, I don't even bring a glass of water. I just come down here, I forget to kind of bring a snack or anything. I'm just like, yep, let's do the show. And it's like, not even a little drink. I'm getting a bit pony, that's a little hoarse. Old Arcata Road project gets okay from council. It says Arcata will be moving forward with a long-discussed improvements project over Old Arcata Road following the City Council's majority approval of its Wednesday night regular meeting. Isn't that wonderful? So that's the Times Standard. Gavin Newsom's a very handsome-looking governor, isn't he? Very handsome. Not universally liked, but kind of handsome. They've done a pretty good job here in California. They've done a pretty good job. Okay, let's go to the LA Times next. They lead with a photograph of Vladimir Putin. And it says, Kremlin ramps up campaign to spread disinformation. Pro-Moscow media amplify falsehoods to justify an invasion. Yes, to hear Russian media tell it, the government of Ukraine is run by neo-Nazis waging a genocidal campaign against ethnic Russians in the country's east, where Moscow-backed authorities regularly uncover mass graves full of the corpses of women and children with bound hands and bludgeoned heads as they face the hell of constant shelling. Such false images and narratives have become a daily staple in Russia in the months since the estimated 150,000 Russian troops, along with armored vehicles, warplanes and naval ships, began assembling on Ukraine's periphery. The Russian media have gone into overdrive with stories depicting a government in Kiev so cruel that Moscow had no choice but to swoop in and protect the ethnic Russians in eastern Ukraine's Donbas region. It's a war between the Ukrainian government and its own people, People are dying there every day. Thousands of civilians died there. Thousands of children lost their limbs there, buried in little coffins. This is not true, by the way. This is not true. I mean, there has been a war waging there for about 8 or 9 years. But it's separatists. Go there once, you'll change your attitude completely, and you'll understand that Russia can't help but stop this war, is what they're announcing on RT. RT is a Russian state television channel, Russia Today, and it's basically a propaganda channel. And it's frustrating because a lot of kind of Western hosts appear on it and seem to, overlook the fact that it's a Russian state media channel. You've got to have some standards. Like I used to work for Sky occasionally, and when I kind of really got under the skin of what Rupert Murdoch was up to, I stopped working for him. I just didn't want to be there anymore. And then he doesn't own it anymore, though. Sky News now is not owned by Rupert Murdoch. It is in Australia, though. Sky News Australia is the most propaganda-y channel. It sounds just like Fox News, because Australia is very right-wing. And obviously Fox News, as we know, is owned by Rupert Murdoch and is a propaganda channel. Again, it's like a Republican National Committee mouthpiece. It's not true. The stuff you hear on there is just not true. Hi, Jersey. Hi, Michelle. Hi, Lily. Welcome. US and NATO heighten warnings on Russia, it says. Secretary of State Antony Blinken warned on Thursday that Russia is preparing to launch an attack against Ukraine, echoing earlier comments from US and Western officials who said that an invasion could come any day and that Moscow would seek to use disinformation to create a pretext for such an assault. The most immediate threat to peace and security is Russia's looming aggression against Ukraine, Blinken said during an impromptu stop at UN Security Council meeting to discuss developments. The stakes go far, far beyond Ukraine. This is a moment of peril and for the lives and safety of millions of people. Yeah, pro-Moscow media amplifying falsehoods to justify an invasion. It's a night of spills, no thrills for accused skater Valieva. Maybe just the pressure was too much for a teenager, even a precociously talented teen such as Camila Villera. The 15-year-old Russian, hailed as the new face of women's figure skating, stumbled through triple jumps and tumbled out of quadruples, waving a hand in disgust as her free skate program ended. After a week embroiled in doping allegations and controversy of international proportions, Valieva quite suddenly looked her age on Thursday night, bending under a weight that pressed her out of a medal contention from first all the way down to fourth place. Poor sausage. What a poor little sausage. I tell you, I mean, it's I don't know. I just feel sorry for kids who are having to have this much pressure put on them to appear on the world stage in a competitive sport. I just don't think it's healthy. So much pressure. I have not watched any of it, no. I don't have any interest in it. I just don't. I don't. It's so weird, someone was saying this to me the other day. They're like, what do you do to relax? I'm like, I sleep at night. That's what I do. I go to sleep at night. I'm kind of working most of the day. Like even in the evenings, I don't really get time to watch a show. I'm working on my show for the next day, the night before. I like it that way. I mean, I'm not moaning about it. I'm just saying that I would love to be able to have enough time on my hands. I mean, maybe I'm going to have my children all day tomorrow. So maybe I'm just going to sit with my kids and we'll kind of work our way through the Beijing Olympics. And I'll show them all the different sports. I did try and show them the downhill skiing the other day, and they weren't that interested. I mean, unless they were doing it themselves. I have taken them skiing. You only have to drive an hour out of sunny Los Angeles to hit the slopes. Isn't that crazy? Just an hour out of LA to hit the snow. Hello to Jersey. Hello, Michelle. Hello, Lily. And also, guilty verdict in fentanyl death of Angels pitcher. This is a former Angels communications director. Was found guilty on Thursday of distributing fentanyl and given tireless Skaggs the drugs that caused the Angel pitcher's death in a suburban Dallas hotel room in 2019, concluding a trial that yanked Major League Baseball to the center of the national opioid crisis. Eric Kay faces 20 years to life in a federal prison on and up to $1 million fine. His sentencing is scheduled for June 28. So there we go. That's... Oh, hang on a second. There's one more story here on the front of the LA Times. State details plan as COVID wanes. California officials on Thursday offered a cautious blueprint for the next phase of the pandemic, expressing optimism at the progress that has been made, but stressing the state must be prepared for the potential for new variants and waves. So there we go. That's the LA Times. A reminder that Backchannel has a growing list of shows. Haley and Allison live in the morning. Live Every Day, live from Texas. Hal Rudnick, your pal Hal, he's here in about an hour and a quarter. He's on after me, also from California. So, we're from all over. Let's go to Austin now, the American Statesman. 19 charged is the headline. This is a state grand jury has indicted 19 Austin police officers related to allegations of excessive force during the May 2020 George Floyd protests, according to the Austin Police Union's president, citing attorneys who were briefed on the matter. Grand jurors were considering charges this week against as many as 21 officers, a number that has grown during the ongoing grand jury probe. And the number of indictments already is likely to be among the highest for police in any U.S. city in the social unrest ignited by Floyd's murder more than 20 months ago. I mean, again, this is the same thing, isn't it? This is the police who think that they are a totalitarian force. And it is not the police's job to kill people. It just isn't. It's criminals' job to kill people. It's police's job to arrest people and have them go on trial and go to prison. It's not their job to execute them. And yet again, police just love it. It's like there is a percentage of them who really enjoy inflicting pain and suffering, whether it be in the eyes with some kind of pepper spray, or whether it be rubber bullets, or whether it be using a water cannon, or, they seem to get off on it. I just don't understand that mentality. And you could argue that, are the police any different to the criminals that are put inside for violent crime? Are the police any different other than they're wearing a uniform and they're protected by the unions? It's just criminality legalized for the sake of peacekeeping. Except there is no peacekeeping if they're weaponized. Grand jurors were considering charges this week against as many as 21 officers, a number that has grown during the ongoing grand jury probe. And the number of indictments already is likely to be among the highest for police of any U.S. city in the social unrest ignited by Floyd's murder. Prosecutors did not immediately identify the officers facing charges or the charges they face. Under Texas law, an indictment must remain confidential until an officer has been arrested. Police supervisors and attorneys for the officers were working on Thursday to notify the indicted officers and instruct them on how and where to surrender. Yeah. Surrender. I mean, why has it taken 20 months? Seriously, why has it taken 20 months? Also, Austin to pay $10 million to two men injured in 2020 protests is the headline. It says the city of Austin has agreed to pay a combined $10 million to settle federal lawsuits with two men who were badly wounded by police during the social justice protests of May 2020. The settlements with Justin Howell and Anthony Evans, who both suffered head injuries from less lethal beanbag rounds fired by Austin police officers, were approved by a unanimous vote on Thursday by the city council. Beanbag rounds. So these what, like little bags of beans that really hurt? Oh, that's lovely, isn't it? Who sold that to the police service? The idea of firing, high-capacity beanbags. Hayes County hires new manager for rent program 8 months after receiving a $6.9 million grant to help residents cover rent and utility bills. Hayes County hired a new program manager this week to take over running of the Emergency Rental Assistance Program. There it is. There it is. Okay, let's just say hi to a couple of people. Oh, Lynn, it's your first time on the show. That's nice. That's great. Where are you, Lynn? Illinois. Oh, Illinois. Lovely. What a treat. Right, let's get back to these newspapers. Oh, maybe we did them all. Oh, no, we didn't. We've got a few more. Just a few more. Where do I get a glass of water from in this town? I can't. Where can I get a glass of water from? I didn't bring one with me. I mean, I've got some stale water from a few days ago. Maybe I can try that. Let's see what that's like. Oh, it just smells of metal. I don't think I want any of that. Excuse me. Let's do these 3 more papers, and then we'll do the volume news update. Let's go to Texas now, and the Austin American-Statesman. They lead with 19 charged. Did we do this already? Yeah, we did. We did this already. Okay, next up is the Caller Times for Texas. They lead this morning with, this is Corpus Christi, Biden, Russia, a very high threat. Fears of a new war in Europe re-emerged on Thursday as US President Joe Biden warned that Russia could invade Ukraine within days, and violence spiked in a long-running standoff in eastern Ukraine that some fear could be the spark for wider conflict. World dignitaries raced for solutions, but suspicions between East and West only seemed to grow as NATO allies rejected Russian assertions that it was pulling back troops from exercises that had fueled fears of an attack. Russia has reportedly built up some 150,000 military around Ukraine's borders. So, that's all kind of kicking off, isn't it? Kind of imminent. Something's imminent. Either a ceasefire or some brief... I think there'll be some brief conflict. That's my opinion. It'll be brief, but there will be some conflict. Local church hosts guest speakers is the headline. A Corpus Christi church is changing its services this month to educate the community for Black History Month. Reverend Claude Axel, pastor of at Mount Pilgrim Baptist Church for more than 30 years, invited 4 men to speak to his congregation each Sunday in February to celebrate and educate his congregation's youth on Black history. He said, "I'm trying to encourage other young people to move on and that they could really be something. Because my thing is you can always focus on the kids because they represent the future." That's such a lovely thing to say, isn't it? I wish the parents of these children who are kind of moaning about books in schools that they consider to be pornographic, that they've never read, I wish they would consider their children's future, with some thought and, just a little bit of integrity. Texas will use surplus panels from federal government for border wall. Oh, man. Why? Says after the Biden administration halted the construction of the former President Donald Trump's border wall, hundreds of unused wall panels were now left at construction sites. 1,700 unused panels declared surplus property by the federal government have been shipped from California to help build Governor Greg Abbott's state-funded wall, according to spokespeople for the U.S. Department of Defense and Texas Facilities Commission. The Biden administration halted virtually all work on the federal wall in January 2021. Said Colonel Chris Mitchell, a spokesman for the Department of Defense, which has been in charge of awarding some of the federal wall contracts under Trump, said the 32-foot tall steel bollard panels were at a storage site in San Diego. The Texas Facilities Commission, the state office in charge of Texas border wall construction, applied in November to receive the surplus panels through the federal government's General Service Administration. I mean, why? Do you know, I found out yesterday, I had no idea. Governor Greg Abbott, we talk about him all the time, the governor of Texas. I had no idea the guy was a wheelchair user. Did you know that, Carla? He's a wheelchair user. Why have I never noticed that before? I wonder what's up with him. I'm sure I've seen him walking around before. I mean, maybe I'm mistaken. But I watched him giving a press conference and the guy was in a wheelchair. And I was like, I have no memory of you being a wheelchair user. Interesting. A spokesperson for the Facilities Commission said the state didn't have to disclose to the federal government that it planned to use the panels for Texas border wall project, adding the state followed the surplus program's rules. In December, the Facilities Commission hired New York-based Posilico Civil Inc. to haul the panels from San Diego to Eagle Pass at a cost of $2 million, according to the contract awarded to the engineering firm. That's your money. That's your money. You Texas people, that's your money. Building a wall. Okay, I think we're done on the old newspapers. Oh no, we've got the San Antonio Express News, which is for Stacy. Stacy says she can't read because she's visually impaired. Stacy, allow me. Here we go. The San Antonio Express News. Judge, Trump must testify in New York. See, a little good news. Yes, former President Donald Trump must answer questions under oath in New York State's civil investigation into his business practices, a judge ruled on Thursday. Arthur Engoron ordered Trump and his two eldest children, Ivanka and DTJ, to Donald Trump Jr., DTJ, to comply with subpoenas issued in December by New York Attorney General Letitia James. Trump and his two children must sit for depositions within 21 days, Engoron said, following a 2-hour hearing with lawyers for the Trump and James's office. In the final analysis, the state attorney general commences investigating a business entity, uncovers copious evidence of possible financial fraud, and wants to question under oath several of the entity's principals, including its namesake. She has the clear right to do so, Engoron wrote in his decision. I mean, Trump, will probably end up being done for this, and could get a prison sentence. The problem is that in America, rich white men tend not to get prison sentences. And I know the stakes are particularly high with this guy because he's like the Adolf Hitler of the 21st century. So there's a lot at stake here. I mean, the thing is, as much as I would relish seeing this guy go to prison, there will be a civil war like you have never seen. This is what will happen. And he's been advocating for it. He's basically saying, in his last speech, the rally that he did in Texas, he basically said, they're not coming after me, they're coming after you. He was trying to basically say that any arrest that he might fall foul of is an arrest on his MAGA people. And he's encouraging them to protest and to rise up against the authorities. The guy is inciting violence even now, even today. Jordan Peterson. Oh, he's the worst. Jordan Peterson. He's like a fake intellectual. And so many people have fallen for this guy. And you'd only have to listen to him for 5 minutes if you've got half a brain to hear that the guy is completely insane. And he has extreme right-wing views. But he wrote this book, you see, that kind of was an international bestseller. It sold about 4 million copies. And unfortunately, the book gave him credence. And people read it, and white supremacists read it, and they felt like they were superior after reading it. And he has basically now... And the tragedy is the media, the mainstream media, they interview him all the time. Why? Why are they falling for it too? They think that just because somebody uses flowery language and references studies, because he's very well read, he obviously has some kind of memory where he's able to recall things. But he has basically fooled a whole bunch of newsrooms into thinking that he's the real deal, and he isn't. He's just an extremist in a nice suit. He's very unhealthy for society. And he seems to despise women, and he seems to despise democracy. I mean, the guy is really an evil person, and yet, because he is an intellectual, people don't know the difference between an intellectual and a criminal. They don't know the difference between an intellectual and a baddie. The guy's a baddie. He's not a goodie. So what do you do with people like Jordan Peterson? There's an increasing number of them, that are appearing on the right, and it gives the right credence. The worst one, who's worse than him, is... what's her name? She's a very attractive black female with an amazing brain, amazing eloquency, completely far-right kind of views, and she makes a compelling argument. It's compelling. And yet, it's all lies. It's like it's living in this parallel universe, this kind of fake space. Oh yeah, she's dead against the Black Lives Matter movement. Her name will come to me in a moment. I talk about her quite a lot. I just can't remember it today. I can't remember anything today. I've been watching big planes TV all morning. Measure to bring relief for noise late at night is the headline here on the San Antonio Express News. It says, where an apartment complex is going up behind Vicky Melton's neighborhood in Stone Oak, construction workers sometimes were on the job with music blasting as late as 3 a.m. As president of the Big Springs Homeowners Association, she fielded calls late into the night and early in the morning from neighbors complaining about lost sleep. That's not going to happen anymore, she said. City Council on Thursday imposed new limits on nighttime construction work in residential areas and gave city officials new tools to enforce the restrictions. Council members unanimously approved the changes to the city code over the background hum of downtown construction work. I mean, how is it possible that construction is not automatically expected to halt at like 8 o'clock at night? Any city should have a 7 till 7, 12 hours. Like, how long do you want people on the job? I don't know. I just feel like we are... in England, they have a kind of construction site policy that is the same across the country, In America, there is nothing. There's no rules unless someone complains, and then they might eventually think about making a rule. Yeah, I mean, I think the reason they start early, some of these builders, is because then they can finish early. I think that's the reason. Okay, let's do the Volley News Update. It is it's a podcast that you can download wherever you get your podcasts from. And it is 2 minutes long. It's called the US News Update. And let's see if we can get it on and see what it sounds like. And you can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Here it is. It's Friday, February 18. From the Volley Network, this is your daily US News Update. I'm Anthony Davis. The US Senate on Thursday moved towards final passage of legislation to fund the government through March 11, hoping to avoid the embarrassing spectacle of a federal government shutdown amid the Russia-Ukraine crisis. Senators faced a midnight Friday deadline for passing the bill and sending it to President Joe Biden for signing into law before existing federal funds expire. A government shutdown would be useless, senseless. Can you imagine how that would look to the Russians? Senate Appropriations Committee Chairman Patrick Leahy said in a speech just before the vote. Senators then voted overwhelmingly to advance the bill towards a final vote. This third stopgap measure since last September, which already has been approved by the House of Representatives, would give congressional Democrats and Republicans until March 11 to reach a deal on a spending bill that would keep Washington humming through September 30th, the end of the fiscal year that began October 1st. Meanwhile, a New York judge ruled on Thursday that former US President Trump and 2 of his adult children must answer questions under oath within 21 days in the state attorney general's civil probe into their family's company. Justice Arthur Engoron of the New York State Court in Manhattan ruled in favor of Attorney General Letitia James in directing Trump, his son Don Jr., and his daughter Ivanka to testify. Engoron said James had the clear right to issue her subpoenas and question the Trumps after having uncovered copious evidence of possible financial fraud. Your daily US News Update is part of the Volley Network. To hear my live daily morning show, ask your Amazon Echo device. Open Backchannel. There it is, the US News Update, available to you wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Anthony Davis. Welcome to Backchannel. It's 10 o'clock here on the West Coast. It's 1 o'clock Eastern. And we've been looking through the morning papers, and we just finished the San Antonio Express News with that news that you just heard in the US News Update, that the judge said that the Trumps must testify in New York as lawyers seek to block a subpoena in that business probe. So they're really panicking now. The Trumps are really panicking. I mean, Don Jr. was like putting out these crazy videos. He's obviously like taken drugs or something, and he's like puts out these videos of him at home just like slagging everybody off. Donald Trump put out a statement the other day that completely contradicted his own accountancy firm and has put him in legal jeopardy because he's so thick he doesn't understand the consequences of his words. And even Eric Trump as well is really like freaking out and saying crazy stuff on Fox News. So this is what we're dealing with now, you know? Okay, let's move on to our conversations because we've got a few topics to get through. We want to look at this gun suspect offered bail. It's kind of an interesting story. Kentucky lawmaker seeks to change bail law after Quintez Brown freed from jail in shooting. Yes, responding to the furor. Do you say furor? Furor? See, furore, I would agree if we were in Europe, but I think here in America they say furor. Because we spell it differently. You know, we have like an accent in there and a few extra letters. But I think the American way is Führer, as in like Hitler. Responding to the furore over Wednesday night's jail release of activist Quintez Brown, a Louisville lawmaker said he will introduce a bill next week to put a constitutional amendment on the ballot allowing defendants to be detained without bail if they pose a grave danger. Representative Jason Nemes said the bill would adopt portions of federal law that allow people to be held without bail if there is evidence they're in danger or a danger to the community. The legislation comes in response to Brown's release on a $100,000 bond 3 days after he was charged with the attempted murder of 4 staffers at his campaign headquarters. Police say Brown went to Greenberg headquarters and opened fire with a Glock handgun, grazing the mayoral candidate's sweater. No one was injured. Under Kentucky law, judges must set bail for all defendants except those charged with murders for which the death penalty is possible. Nemes said his bill would allow voters to consider whether to expand the no bail provision to a limited number of other crimes. We need to allow judges to be better able to protect citizens, Nemes, a Republican, said in an interview. I mean, this is interesting, isn't it? I mean, let's talk about this for a second. Because there was nobody injured in the gun attack. Quintez Brown is a 21-year-old left-wing activist who's pleaded not guilty to attempted murder. He was bailed out by a Black Lives Matter fund on Wednesday. And Mr. Greenberg said it indicates the justice system is clearly broken. Mr. Brown from West Louisville was reportedly an organizer during Black Lives Matter protests in the city following the fatal shooting of Breonna Taylor in 2020. He's previously worked in youth violence prevention training, was once invited to meet Barack Obama at the launch of a program started by the former US president. Mr. Brown's lawyer has been said his client suffered a mental health breakdown before the shooting and has not slept for days or weeks. Monday's gun attack came as Mr. Greenberg, a Democrat, was holding a meeting with 4 staff members. Nobody was injured, though a bullet did graze the candidate's sweater. Mr. Brown was arrested with a pistol and ammunition near the crime scene. His release after 2 days has provoked criticism from Republicans and Democrats alike. Police have not discussed any motive. They say it's nearly impossible to believe that someone can attempt murder on Monday and walk out of jail on Wednesday, Mr. Greenberg said in a statement. If someone is struggling with a mental illness and is in custody, they should have been evaluated and treated in custody. The mayoral candidate last month released plans for a community-oriented police force and more mental health treatment as part of his platform for public safety in Louisville. In December, Mr. Brown announced his campaign for a seat in the Louisville Metro Council. They say jail is a final destination for black folks in this state, Chanel Home told the Louisville Courier-Journal. Mr. Brown is a former columnist for that newspaper. In Washington, D.C., Kentucky Republican Senator Mitch McConnell also condemned Mr. Brown's release. I mean, this is going to happen more and more. You know, this is the idea that activists are going to be treated like criminals. And whatever they do and say... I know he fired a gun, but my point is that and I don't know enough about the story, but I'm just talking generally for a second, that because we saw this happen during the protests in Portland and Charlottesville, and even the protest outside the White House when Trump had everybody tear-gassed and pepper sprayed and effectively bombed his own American people for protesting. And I think that a lot of US democratic free protest, if Republicans are in charge, will be dressed up as some kind of criminal or terrorist activity. I mean, they already designated Antifa a terrorist organization. And we're all Antifa. I'm Antifa. Hopefully you're Antifa too. We're all Antifa. The only person that isn't Antifa is Donald Trump. He can't be anti-fascist because he is the fascist. So, you have to ask yourself with these types of things, how much of this is the kind of totalitarian attitude of the increasingly right-wing governors and Republican Party as a whole. But as I say, I don't know enough about that story. It's actually the first I've heard of it. I don't know why it didn't pass me, didn't kind of come my way. Maybe because there was a war going on in Russia or in Ukraine. Maybe that's why I was a bit distracted. I just worry now that, there's a lot we could talk about with this. But I do worry that what used to be considered free protest and the right to assemble has been rebranded in like a looting, This is what they said about the BLM movement. And this is what they're still saying now. They're like, well, if you're going to investigate people for breaking into the Capitol on January 6th, then why aren't you investigating people who caused damage for the Black Lives Matter protests? They don't understand the difference. One was an attack on the seat of democracy because the president told them to do so. There was no president that told people to protest for Black lives. In fact, quite the opposite, in fact. And this brings us to this argument about this false concept that the election was unfair in any way. And with the Texas primary looming in less than 2 weeks, the Houston Chronicle did something very interesting. They asked every Republican candidate running for Congress whether or not they believed the 2020 election was stolen or fraudulent. And here's what they found. Of the 86 with discernible stances, 42 have said outright that the 2020 election was stolen, calling the results illegitimate or saying they would have voted not to certify. Another 11 candidates said there was enough fraud or irregularities to cast doubt on the results of the election. Just 13 said the results were legitimate. I said to you, every Republican now has taken the position that Donald Trump takes because they know that he is all-powerful and they don't want to get on the wrong side of him. A bit of quick math produces this. Just 9% of Republicans running for Congress this year are willing to publicly state the fact that the 2020 election was free and fair. Just 9%. And that's not an isolated finding. In CNN's latest national poll released earlier this month, 70% of Republicans said President Joe Biden's victory was not legitimate. Another 45% of Republicans said there was solid evidence to prove that fact. And there isn't. But this is what I was saying about living in this echo chamber where you are just hearing this crazy, insane noise all the time. There is zero evidence that the 2020 election was marred by widespread voter fraud. In swing state after swing state, recount after recount revealed that the election was, in the main, free of any major errors. And the few votes that they did, I think it was 475 votes that they found, that were slightly dodgy. Not because people had gone out of their way to be fraudulent, because they were accidentally filled in or something was awry. Not enough votes to have changed the outcome of the election. But what's become clear in the year plus since the 2020 election is that former President Donald Trump has turned election denialism into a loyalty test for ambitious Republicans. He literally has he's convinced Republicans to show their loyalty to him by not denying that there was election fraud. Oh, the big lie will live on forever. And the tragedy is there'll be another big lie, because you've got to remember this whole thing was just a rehearsal for next time. The whole thing, January 6th, the thing with the state legislators and wanting to send them back and having new legislatures, and the whole thing was a rehearsal for 2024. The whole thing is a rehearsal. The insurrection and the whatever it happens next time is going to be far bigger than this, because all of the experts on authoritarianism state that if a coup fails, it's guaranteed to work the next time, because they know exactly how to play it. They just know. On a near daily basis, Trump beats the drum via his Save America PAC on the false notion that he was somehow robbed of a victory and the only real Republicans support him in this effort. Mitch McConnell does not speak for the Republican Party, does not represent the views of the vast majority of its voters, Trump said in a statement earlier this month about the Senate Minority Leader. He did nothing to fight for his constituents and stop the most fraudulent election in American history. If Mitch would have fought for the election like the Democrats would have in the same position, we would not be discussing any of the above today, and our country would be strong and proud instead of weak and embarrassed. I mean, Trump's language is like a child, isn't it? He just writes like a baby. Talks like a baby, because fundamentally he never grew up. He never evolved into an adult. He's still about like who's got the biggest bag of sweets. And revenge as well. Revenge is massive in the authoritarian's playbook. So if he ever did get back in, he would wield revenge at a level that would undermine most of the kind of civic responsibility that we have now. I'm telling you, there is going to be serious lawlessness. And I don't like to be the predictor of bad news, but this has even started. I mean, it's going to get way worse. So candidates have largely fallen in line. In Georgia, Senator David Perdue, who's running against Governor Brian Kemp in a Republican primary, said late last year that he would have not have signed the election certification if he'd been governor. Georgia conducted 3 recounts of its vote, including a manual one. All 3 affirmed the fact that Biden had beat Trump. Around the same time, Ohio Senate frontrunner Josh Mandel told a debate audience that I believe the election was stolen from Donald Trump. Representative Billy Long, who's running for the Senate in Missouri, has run TV ads pledging to stop the Democrats from stealing another election. Carrie Lake, the Trump-endorsed frontrunner in the Arizona gubernatorial, has called the state's Secretary of State to be jailed for her role in the 2020 election. The conclusion, they say, Trump's false claims about 2020 have become a must-hold position for aspiring Republican candidates, which means that whether or not he runs or wins in 2024, the big lie will live on. I mean, this is America. This is happening in America. I wouldn't mind if, we were talking about this and it was like we were living in some war-torn nation that had already kind of crashed and burned half a dozen times. Like Afghanistan is now, struggling to kind of get back on its feet with a Taliban rule after American occupation and losing the war. Or, of course, the time the Taliban had it last time and there was the Russian invasion back in the 90s. The point is that America has had one shot at this. Like, the American experiment is like only a year old. I mean, it's like a generation old. It effectively has never been tested. Modern America has never been tested like it has recently. And so we're stuck in a situation, aren't we? Where for the first time, people are starting to question whether or not America can survive. From itself. I wouldn't mind if it was like an invasion from abroad, if it was some kind of, if the Russians were invading or the Chinese. It's America escaping from itself. There isn't even an enemy. And that's why Putin is so happy about this. And this is why President Xi Jinping is so happy about this. It's because America is doing this to itself. They don't have to do anything. America is causing chaos in and of itself. And so what are you going to be left with? You're left with a country that is so divided, so divisive, that you'll have two groups of people who will just never meet. And if they do meet, it'll be aggressive and angry and violent, and there'll be guns wielded, and it'll be back to being like the Wild West, cowboys and Indians. Well, it's not actually true, that statistic, Carla, and let me explain why. This is the statistic that 70% of Republicans think that his win wasn't legitimate. The reason it's not true is because it's what they say, it's not what they think. So I would suggest that most of them know that the election was legitimate. Do you see what I mean? But because of their blind loyalty to this dictator, because they don't want to be embarrassed or be given a nickname or be hauled over the coals, they say that it was stolen because it appeases the supreme leader. And what they're doing inadvertently is they're undermining democracy for themselves and for the rest of the country. And that's the tragedy, is that 70% of Republicans have chosen to crash and burn democracy over their blind loyalty to Donald Trump. And I don't think, if you listen to Adam Kinzinger, who's on the January 6th committee, and he talks privately or privately about private conversations, he says they all know it wasn't stolen. They know it was a legitimate election, but they're not going to say that because we've gone too far down the road of this lie now, so we might as well just stay with it. It's become a political tactic, a posturing tactic, to take the view that the election was stolen when it obviously wasn't. Even the Conservative-packed Supreme Court was not prepared to take on this case. They were like, no, we're not looking at this, because there was no fraud. So now you have Republican lawmakers who are being held to ransom by a guy who's not even in office and might not even run again. So the whole of American democracy is now being undermined by a guy who was twice impeached and got voted out with a 4 million vote landslide. Never won the popular vote. You know that Republicans have not won the popular vote in 30 years. They just haven't. Scarlett, welcome from Texas. Your first time on the show. Great to see you. And Ainsley's with us as well. Hello, Ainsley. Thank you for joining Backchannel. Stacey had to go. Thank you, Stacey. Ricky and Connor are with us, and Corey as well, and Reza and Jennifer and Lynn and Jersey and Michelle. This is the Backchannel community. We're all sitting around having a little discussion about American politics. We're totally up to this. Maybe you live in a family, because this is the thing that saddens me the most, and we had it in England with Brexit. Some members of the family will be on the wrong side of this. Some people in your family will be like, well, Trump won the election and Biden's in the White House, and so there's something wrong with that. And if you don't think that way, if you know what the truth is, then how do you cope with that? What do you say to these people? How do you qualify their views in your family? Do you just have a rule that you don't talk about politics, or is there something else going on? You can let me know. Just wake up your device, say the word "say," and then your message. Or you can type to me at backchannel.tv. Because we really are living in this parallel universe now, where the Trump train is on the move. These people are all on it, and they've got this whole narrative, this whole complete kind of life for themselves. And it bears no resemblance to reality. And I'm not saying that Democrats live in reality, but they live in reality. And the reason I know this is because I listen to both sides, and one is telling the truth and one is lying. And of course, yesterday when Trump was, being told that he had to, face questioning and he had to give a deposition within 21 days, did Fox News cover that? No, not a word. Instead, they concocted a fake story about Hillary Clinton, and they ran it all day. In fact, somebody counted yesterday that Hillary Clinton's name was mentioned 100 times on Fox News yesterday. And she had to put out a Twitter post to say that this story that Fox News are running, they're only running it because of the bad news that Donald Trump's having today. And they're trying to create a diversion. The story they posted is completely untrue. It's completely false. It's been debunked dozens of times. It's just some crazy opinion that got put online, and before you know it, someone thinks it's legitimate because it gets picked up by a news service without fact-checking. I sometimes think it's fun to go on Twitter and to look at what's trending, and to kind of see what's happening. I do this sometimes. And currently, Trump crime family is the number 2 trending story in this area where I am, California. Kim Potter is trending. We've talked about her. Wordle. I don't get Wordle. I just don't get it. Do you do Wordle, Carla? Can you explain to me what it is? Because I have no idea. Wordle and Wordle. Okay. There's also a trending topic today called Red COVID. Red COVID. It's the New York Times' latest newsletter, which is about Red COVID, which is described in part as a partisan divide over COVID-19 vaccine skepticism. A very interesting story in the New York Times today. That's right, yes. Pence is giving a talk today at Stanford. And I saw there was a whole protest of people outside, and they're all waving placards, and they're saying, "We are woke." It's like the woke brigade. He's giving this speech about, the right not being intimidated by this woke left and how to handle the woke left. And meanwhile, the woke left are outside. I love being woke. I'm very proud of my wokeness. Bring it on. I don't particularly like the phrase, but I understand that it's, part of a movement, and I enjoy being part of a movement. I want to be more thoughtful and more respectful and make changes to my behavior to benefit others. And if that's called woke, then fine. But we see what the white supremacists like Mike Pence are saying is that they don't want to do that. They don't want to change because they want their Aryan, white, Anglo-Saxon race to be the dominant race. And that's all they care about. They care drastically that they are losing ground to this new wave of migrants and ethnic minorities and African Americans. And it's like it's just pure racism. So basically, Pence is making a racist speech today at Stanford. Isn't that wonderful? It's 10:26 here on the West Coast. It's 1:26 Eastern. I'm Anthony Davis. This is Backchannel. Eli joined us. Blake and Mario and Karen, Timothy, Scarlett, Ainsley, Ricky, Connor, Corey, Reza, Jennifer, Lynn, Jersey and Michelle, and Lily, and Sage, and Davey, and Mama, and Cade, and Raymond, and Charlotte, and Jaden, and Sawyer, and Tyson. Stacey had to go. Robert's still with us. Michael as well. What a wonderful bunch of people to hang out with on a Friday. Who loves a Friday? I mean, let's think about this for a moment. It's Friday. Isn't that great? Got a whole weekend ahead of us. A whole weekend to do great stuff. And meanwhile, Mike Pence is making a speech about how to fend off woke America. Mike Pence, the whitest man in America, it's like he's being hailed a hero for certifying the election But at the same time, the fact that he even considered not certifying the election, in my mind, makes the guy an arch criminal. You know, he's not a good person. Oh, just send me a link to that then. Send me a link to that. I'll have a look. Well, Tesla's been in hot water for a long time. We're going to look at this. We're going to look at a Tesla story. And see what's up. See what's happening. I can't see it. Maybe you can send it to me. I can't see it. There's been a lot of coverage in the media about the storm in England, and the O2, which is one of our most... 2 people died. Wow. The O2, which is like our best like music arena, the whole roof's been ripped off of it. You know? It's completely gone. Carla, did you know that I was the first person to take to the stage at the O2 Arena in London? Did you know that? It's one of my unknown facts. I was one of the first people, probably the first person to take to the stage. I hosted the test event that they put on when they converted the Millennium Dome into the O2 Arena. I hosted they put on a show, and they invited local people to fill the 15,000 seats. And they put on a show just to test everything. You know, the whole systems and the acoustics and the everything. They've never done a show before. And I hosted it. Isn't that great? So I played a 15,000 seater. Great. So this is the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. It's investigating reports of Teslas braking unexpectedly when using autopilot. The braking occurs without warning, at random, and often repeatedly in a single drive, according to the NHTSA. It estimates that 416,000 vehicles may be affected. The agency did not say whether it was aware of any collisions, injuries, or fatalities associated with the issue. Well, the agency's Office of Defects Investigation has received 354 complaints alleging the unexpected braking in 2021-2022 Tesla Model 3s and Tesla Model Ys in the past 9 months. The alleged braking occurs while using autopilot, which is Tesla's suite of driver assist features which now allow the vehicle to brake and steer automatically. Tesla owners sometimes refer to the unexpected brake activation as phantom braking. The investigation focuses on Teslas produced since the automaker removed radar from most of its vehicles, choosing to rely exclusively on cameras. That's right, I remember when they did that. The NHTSA is not investigating the Model X or the Model S, which Tesla did not immediately remove radar from. One person filing a complaint alleged their new Tesla, which lacks radar, has more phantom braking issues than their previous Tesla that had radar. The new Model Y, with vision only, is unreliable and dangerous, they wrote. The vehicle will randomly brake with no traffic in broad daylight. Another person who filed a complaint alleged that the problem occurred more than 20 times while on a road trip from California to Colorado. I believe this problem is extremely dangerous and have not turned on the autopilot features since October, the person wrote. Tesla did not respond to a request for comment. So the thing is, and it might be the case because they've just had this with this boombox feature. Do you know about this? They're organizing a recall of Teslas because of a boombox feature last fall before the automaker issued a safety recall last month. The feature was recalled because it could negatively impact the pedestrian warning system and make a crash more likely. So and I think they've been able to fix that over the air because, you know, this is the great thing about Teslas. They're all connected to the internet. And so Tesla can just push a software update, and that fixed the boombox feature. So that dealt with that. So that recall is effectively done at the touch of a button. Well, the preliminary evaluation into the unexpected braking problem will determine the scope and severity of the potential problem and to fully assess the potential safety-related issues according to the NHTSA. Tesla has had a string of recent recalls, including issues with a seatbelt alert and its full self-driving software. Electric vehicles like Tesla can often be fixed through over-the-air software updates. Such fixes can be made quickly and are not as inconvenient or financially burdensome for drivers and automakers as traditional recalls. So that's the great thing about this, is they could effectively just fix this at the touch of a button. Carla, are you saying that you are skeptical of electric vehicles because if the electricity runs out, then the car is effectively finished? Have you driven in one? You should just arrange a test drive. And you'll see what it's like to be in a car that doesn't emit anything. There are zero emissions. And that's the thing I think about the most. Zero emissions. You could drive it all day. There's not an ounce of CO2 pops out of that car, apart from your breathing. Yeah, but the critics say, that the argument of the cobalt mining and the children mining and all of the, the battery production and everything, that was an issue, but they're saying that was an issue like a decade ago, and they're saying that is not happening now. I just feel like, I don't know. I'm just trying to think about how gas, just petrol, is still an acceptable form of fuel, considering it is the actual product itself is unfriendly, environmentally unfriendly. You pour it into your car and then you burn it, and then by burning it, it puts out a gas that is even more environmentally unfriendly. On so many levels. And when it's like a cold day and you're seeing car exhausts and they're all ticking over and you're just sitting in traffic and you're just seeing all of that schmutz like spewing out the back of the car. Do you not think, where's that going? What is that doing? Why do we even allow that? I've driven electric cars for 5 years and I just feel like if you've got the technology, then why not? There's so many good ones coming out now. Do you remember I recommended my friend's channel, Fully Charged? It's a very good channel. And with the aircraft now, they're starting to try these biofuels because, of course, aviation gas is very environmentally unfriendly, and they're looking at ways that they can reduce, the output of CO2 with biofuel, which I think is amazing. Which is basically, food waste and vegetable oil and various disgusting things all mushed down and turned into... And it's clear. When you hold up biofuel next to avgas or aviation fuel, they're both clear. They just look like water. And one of them comes from sustainable sources and the other one doesn't. Yeah, the revolution is happening. I think it's the problem is, and here's the thing, if you go to a dealership to buy a car in America, which I've done with a couple of people, the salespeople are quite anti-electric because they've been told that there's all this stock of combustion engine vehicles that they need to shift. And there's a lot of profit in those cars, but there's no profit in the electric vehicles yet. There will be in the future, but not at the moment, right? Because they're selling a lot of them at a loss. Sorry, what? Sorry? No, you don't have to get an electric car serviced, no. All you would do with an electric car is you would change the washer fluid. You would fill up the washer fluid, which you can do yourself, and you might rotate the tires before you get new tires. Well, that's all you need to do. There's nothing that needs fixing in an electric car. So no, you don't have to get it serviced. You don't have to go to the gas station. You just have to plug it in somewhere. And that, for a lot of people, is the hardest thing because they don't have a place to plug it in at home. But if you have a driveway, of course, then you do. I can park mine outside my house and plug it in. And then you can go to a fast charger, and the fast charger will charge your car in 20 minutes or half an hour. And if your car has got a 400-mile range, it'll charge up to 80% in like 40 minutes. And during those 40 minutes, you would time it. So if you were doing a long road trip, if you buy a Tesla, they have a whole map around the whole country of these charging stations. They call them superchargers. And so you could plan a road trip that included stopping at superchargers. And you'd be guaranteed to get a space because they have so many chargers. And it's guaranteed to be fast because they pump electricity out at a rate of knots. So, there isn't an argument against them anymore. I mean, I have an argument against hybrid vehicles. I don't think people should be buying hybrid cars. I just think that anything that involves putting gas in is just no good. And then there's some hydrogen cars and a few other new technologies, and they don't seem to work either. The car that I really like is the Hyundai Ioniq 5 that's just coming out now because it has a solar panel on the roof. And so while the car is sitting there in the direct sunlight, it is charging. And if you don't drive much, you'll just keep your charge topped up. And that's got to be the perfect way to make these cars. I don't know why all electric cars don't require a solar panel on the top. Jake, hello. June, Eli, Blake, Mario, Karen, Timothy, Scarlett, Ainsley, welcome. Thank you for joining Backchannel. Are you all electric drivers or are you still driving gas? Maybe you can let me know. Just send a message in the usual way, backchannel.tv, or you can wake up your Echo Show, say the word say, and then your message. Should we look at some latest news? Because they're now saying that the Russian troop buildup is the most significant since World War II. World leaders are meeting in Munich today for a security conference, but Russia won't attend for the first time since 1999. Tonight I'm gonna party like it's 1999. Did I say that out loud? I think so. I thought that was in my inner monologue. Russian President Vladimir Putin, meanwhile, says the situation in eastern Ukraine is deteriorating, which it is not, incidentally. That is propaganda. Russia's been backing rebels in separatist-held areas there since 2014. Moscow continues to deny planning an invasion of Ukraine and accuses the West of stoking hysteria. I mean, this is Putin's skill, isn't it? Like, he just is playing people. He just knows how to play people. And fundamentally, he's just laughing while everybody else is like rushing around going a bit crazy, and he's just thinking, this is wonderful. They're just falling into my trap. Putin is a very smart operator, He's much smarter than a lot of American leaders over the years. The guy is a KGB agent, He's like a secret agent. He understands the psychology behind, the making these moves. A senior European official has said the bloc is considering new sanctions against Belarus if it takes part in any Russian military invasion of Ukraine. Sanctions on Belarus were imposed after President Alexander Lukashenko crushed protests following elections in 2020 and have been tightened since. The EU has banned Belarus's exports of potash, a fertilizer made of potassium and oil products, but diplomats say Belarus is still exporting to the EU via Ukraine. Interesting. The German foreign minister, she said today that all options will be on the table if Russia launches an attack on Ukraine, including cutting the Nord Stream 2 pipeline deal that would bring Russian gas to Germany. Speaking at a security conference in Munich, she said that Germany is ready to pay a high economic price. Wow, I mean, she's not pulling any punches, is she? NATO, the Secretary General, Jens Stoltenberg, he's been speaking, and he says there's not been any de-escalation on the ground, despite Russia's claims that some forces were being withdrawn from parts of Ukraine. Stoltenberg says he remains open to finding a political solution with Russia. Officials have repeatedly warned that Russia may conduct a false flag operation to give it a pretext to launch a military operation in Ukraine. But, I mean, that's already happened now, hasn't it? They do it through these separatists, because the Russians are backing these separatists in Ukraine. So a false flag operation is one that's conducted with the intent of disguising the party responsible for the attack or allowing the attacker to place blame on another party. The term originates from naval warfare in the 16th century, when ships, originally those of pirates, would fly the flags of other nations to achieve the element of surprise. There's been numerous examples of false flag operations in history. And here we are again. It's definitely hotted up over there in the last 24 hours. I mean, that's really the biggest concern now, isn't it? That, it's the graph, the trajectory. Is it getting better? Is it staying the same? Or is it getting worse? And all countries appear to be on the same page when they say that it's getting worse. I wonder how Vladimir Zelensky is going to kind of cope with all this. You know, we were discussing the fact that the guy's just a former stand-up comedian. He has no political experience at all. I mean, this is really going to test this guy, isn't it? It's really going to test his ability to negotiate. And this is why, over the years, presidents and prime ministers, a lot of them have been former military service personnel. People that are decorated. People that have had experience in the theatre of war. And to have a stand-up comedian, this is why you don't want to vote for people like Trump as a TV reality show host, like a fake millionaire, or Vladimir Zelensky. As sweet as he is, he seems like a very nice, guy. But it's like when it comes to these moments, these forks in the road, because it's very easy to manage a country when there's nothing going wrong. And that's partly why Trump, I believe, removed the military out of Afghanistan and attempted to pull people out of all of these active peacekeeping war roles, is that he didn't really know what to do because he didn't have any experience. Remember, he had bone spurs. Why he couldn't fight in Vietnam? It's like he didn't, obviously, he faked that. But by pulling everybody out, gives the impression to the public that he is in some way anti-war, like CND, which is garbage. Of course the guy isn't. He's a quite the opposite. But he didn't know what to do. He had no experience. And so by removing everybody from these active wars, it kind of got him off the hook. Gave the impression to people that he was in control when in fact he was just protecting himself. He's not experienced to make a call on a life or death situation. He just isn't. He doesn't know anything about the military. He wasn't even listening to his military generals. I mean, remember Mark Milley? What he said after Trump was, voted out and before the inauguration? He said he literally had to phone China and say, don't worry, we're not going to nuke you. Mark Milley is a senior-most military officer, the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He put himself between the nuclear codes and the president. He actually broke the rules of his own military requirements. He was trying to protect the country, and I don't blame him for that. And Biden, fortunately, said that I have full confidence in Mark Milley. Max has joined us. Hi, Max. Welcome. Thank you for being part of Backchannel. Should we talk about Black History Month? Because this is something that we wanted to get onto. Comedy is a notoriously difficult field to break into, a fact only amplified if you happen to be a woman, let alone a black woman in the early days of stand-up and vaudeville, and that didn't stop Mums Mabley. Seriously. Should we find out the story? Should we find out what the deal is? She was born Loretta Aitken and suffered the premature deaths of both her parents at a young age. She was impregnated twice, through the violence of rape, and gave birth to children who were taken away. At 14, she joined the African-American vaudeville circuit. She went on to be the first woman featured on stage at the prestigious Apollo Theatre and was invited back so many times she appeared there more than any other performer. She had featured roles in movies. She recorded gold comedy albums. She appeared on television shows like The Smothers Brothers and The Ed Sullivan Show. So who is Mums Mabley? She died in 1975. The trailblazing African-American 20th century comedian, known for her warm yet raunchy stand-up routines and hit albums. I mean, to have lived that life, and still to be able to come out of that and to find enough humor in your life that you can actually entertain people despite all of the trauma that you've been through. I mean, just think about that for a second. I mean, some people maybe they draw on their trauma to create their humor. And a lot of comedians are traumatized, or they're depressed, or they're addicts. And that fuels their ability to be funny. You know, it's all part of it. Unfortunately, it's also part of the drug. You know, the drug of making people laugh is like the drug of alcohol, or the drug of drugs, or whatever their vice might be. Mums Mabley was born in Brevard, North Carolina in the mid-1890s. She went on to establish a career as the top stand-up comedian of her time. She starred in several films, became a headliner at the Apollo Theatre in the 1960s. She had hit comedy albums. She was also a top draw for a number of TV variety shows. She died in 1975 in New York on May 23rd. Whoopi Goldberg directed a documentary on Mabley's life. Whoopi Goldberg, who said that the Holocaust was not about race, and then had to go on TV the next day and apologize. The Reader's Digest published 13 things a stand-up comedian won't tell you. This is interesting. Supply and demand applies to comedy. It says, comedians scrape for gigs because there are so many of us, said Comedy Central's Ophira Eisenberg. Few club owners have the time to develop a comic's career. In this economy, they need to develop their own business, and their business is basically a bar. And some of those bars charge as much as $17 for a Cosmopolitan. That's true. Carla, did you know I was doing stand-up here in Los Angeles before the pandemic? Yeah, I was doing at least one gig every 2 weeks, and quite enjoying it. I was never paid. I wasn't playing places where I was paid. But I quite enjoyed it. I just wanted to know what American audiences were like in comparison to British audiences, and I discovered the hard way by not getting any laughs. But I probably did a couple of dozen gigs here. Some club owners dictate the material, apparently. An owner told me to do family-appropriate material, said one comedian. I asked her to be specific. She said that after telling a joke, I should look at her face, and if she was frowning, it wasn't appropriate. That's good. Know thy audience, it says. At one gig, the comic before me did a bit about how he hated and plotted against his girlfriend's cat. The show was a fundraiser for an animal shelter. Funny. Apparently, the worst audience for a comedian is a bachelorette party. The bride-to-be expects the entire evening to be all about her, and alcohol doesn't help. Some comics have learned how to give Bridezilla her 30 seconds and move on. But if she's going to yell woo every few seconds, it could be a problem. And beware the front row, they say. If someone's talking during the set, move over to that side of the room and slow the words down, said comedian Eddie Brill. All of a sudden, their conversation feels really loud and out of place. And if they go quiet, he moves on. But if they persist, he finishes them off. He says it stinks when you come out for a chat and they build a comedy club right around you. Very good. Oh, and they say, we're not going to stop telling a joke because you're offended. Don't sit in the front row with the girl you're trying to impress, said David Letterman performer Dan Natureman. It could get awkward when the comedian asks if you're dating and the two of you give different answers. That's funny. So we're looking at Mums Mabley, who was born Loretta Mary Aitken in 1894, and how she became one of the great comedians of early television and the like. In the 20s, she began to work with the duo Butterbeans and Susie, eventually became an attraction at the Cotton Club. Mabley entered the world of film and stage as well, working with Nora Zeal Hurston of the 1931 Broadway show Fast and Furious, and taking on a featured role in Paul Robeson's Emperor Jones of 1933. She became the first woman in the 1930s to appear as a featured artist at the Apollo, going on to appear at the theatre's stage more times than any other performer. It's so interesting. Her routines were riotous affairs augmented by the aesthetic she presented as being an older house-dress-clad figure who provided sly commentary on racial bigotry to African-American audiences. Her jokes also pointed towards a lusty zest for younger men. Yet, belying that persona off stage, she had a glamorous, chic look and was known to be a lesbian. Interesting, isn't it? So she made a film. I'd love to see this film. She had a starring role in the 1974 picture Amazing Grace, where she was able to complete despite having a heart attack during the filming. She died in White Plains, New York, just a few months later. So, it's worth checking, isn't it? Worth checking that out. Trying to see what it's called. The documentary is called Mums Mabley, Got Something to Tell You. It was presented at the Tribeca Film Festival on HBO, and it was created by Whoopi Goldberg. So good. Listen, thank you for joining me today. I've really enjoyed this chat. We've talked about Tesla. We've talked about republicanism, free speech. We've talked about the legacy of Donald Trump. Talked about him, being called for deposition and his family. We've looked at all of the newspapers together. We've certainly gone through your messages. We've talked about comedy and comedians and the things they don't tell you when you're doing stand-up comedy. We've also talked about everything that was in every local newspaper right around the country. So we've had a pretty good morning. I'm going to come back on Monday. Have a great weekend. Stay with Backchannel for your pal Hal. He's next.